GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.
I think that sounded a very good intro. All right. Well, welcome everybody to our coaching show. One day we'll get an intro. I don't know if either one of us are ever going to work on that. If somebody wants to build an intro for our coaching show, feel free. But every Tuesday morning, CloverTech and I get together and we offer some instructions, some insights, some motivation, and some tips and tricks if we can help, if we can offer it on content creation. Started doing this, I don't know, about a year ago, let's say in the middle of 2022, helping answer some questions and get people motivated and ready for SHOT Show. And we just kept doing the show, even as SHOT Show approached and happened. And this right now we're in part 3 of a 6 or 7 part series. Talking about advanced content creation. So often these conversations about how to begin with the basics. So we're attempting to do an intermediate/advanced conversation. So I'll shut up, let CloverTech say hey, and then we'll get started.
Hey, yeah, good to be here. Looking forward to this one. This is a topic that I think is on a lot of people's minds, regardless of whether they admit it or not.
Well, when we're talking advanced, I don't think you can get to advanced unless you're somebody rich. And even the rich people we've known over the years worry about paying for their projects because you don't get rich by just throwing money away. So, yeah, if we're talking advanced intermediate, I don't think we have to be baby footing it around for all the people that aren't even playing the game for monetization, right? Like monetization is, well, let me ask this to get started. Is monetization a critical component of scale, of success?
Yes.
In content creation in 2023?
In anything, yes.
Well, I don't know about everything or anything, but yeah, I hear you.
I think so. It's
Certainly,
hard to do. It's hard to do much of anything without money. Let's be
well, you
honest.
can do some theoretical, some spiritual, some like mental, you can do things without money for sure and be successful at them. But yeah, to
But
do the
can
kind of
you?
stuff we're talking about it.
Would you not
Sure.
have to have time off or time to go relax and
If you don't have
enjoy
a lot
and
of needs, you can definitely tune out and do it. But yeah, you're right. It's
maybe, yeah,
it's not necessary. I'm getting into the theoreticals again, but
right.
no. So we're talking content creation, monetization. First off, we do this live. So anybody that's joining us live, feel free to be part of the conversation and ask questions, add your thoughts, your contributions to it. But okay, so we know that it's a necessity, or it's at least a component. Um, between 1 and 100%, you're going to spend 100% of your time on your content creation. Where is monetization there? 50%, 100%? Where do you put it?
Probably 25 to 30.
Oh, interesting. Okay. In the overall project.
What are you talking about? Time spent on those endeavors?
I don't
Is
know.
that
I
kind of what
guess
you're
I'm
talking about?
thinking like of.
Because here's the thing, like, and we'll get into this maybe, but
Okay.
the whole idea when it comes to monetization, and you know this all too well, a lot of monetization, you put the work in, you get the mechanisms in play, you have the revenue generation streams in play, and it's sort of passive in a way. Um, it just happens. A perfect example of it. There's many other forms that I'm sure we'll talk about, but the perfect example of it would be almost like ad revenue on YouTube, right? That's a revenue stream. I mean, that's obviously monetization. It's obviously money. But once you have that video up, it will consistently make a few bucks or pennies or whatever through that ad money. So that's the reason I say 25 to 30% is I'm not talking about. I'm coming at it more from like the time involved in making sure those mechanisms are set up and in play, and dealing with the certain aspects of monetization rather than content creation, let's say, itself.
All right, and I'll agree with that as long as we're saying that the decision on what to do content on or the type of content, is in that direction that create. Because in other words, if you did some kind of content that was of no interest to anyone, then it's not going to see residual income. So I would say if you're building content in the first place that's designed to have uh, long-term interest, long tail, whatever you want to call um, that, then yes, right. But if you're doing stuff that's, I don't know, maybe passing interest or fads or news of the day or something that's just not nobody's going to be going back and referring to, then I don't know if you should expect that. But I think if we're talking content creation in general and someone who's doing it full time, I think that you're going to spend more than 25%. I mean, it'd be great to be able to spend, but I think realistically, you're not going to make, I can't think of too many people that are making enough of their income to be able to think of 75% of their time is spent on other things and YouTube is paying the bills. I mean, that'd be great. And that might happen in some sectors for sure. I just don't think of too many people in our realm doing that. So if it was, aside from the people who, again, are independently wealthy or have an angel investor that's just not too demanding and just offering them funding, I think you're going to be spending some amount of time seeking out and monitoring and find funding. And then when you have the funding, you're going to spend at least that much time still, even if you're not seeking it, you're going to be spending the time you were seeking it to monitor and, do whatever needs to be done to fulfill whatever kind of situation you got going. So I think it's going to be more like, realistically, I'm thinking more like 40, maybe not quite 50%, but I think more than 25. So we've got people joining us. Gizzard was the first one out there. Ozzy, Brooke is joining us. Good morning. And MC. We're talking monetization, and people have different goals and different uh, ideas, I guess, about monetization. So feel free to bring uh, your questions for sure, but your input into this. I'm going to read what the robot came up with as far as topics for today. Monetization segment of this series: the pros and cons of different monetization strategies, ads, memberships, sponsored content, etc. Patreon and crowdfunding, how to set up a successful Patreon campaign, and then affiliate marketing for content creators, a how-to guide. So, which of those would you want to dig into if you had these three offered on a buffet? Which are you going to dig into first?
Which three was it?
Pros and cons of monetization strategies,
Yeah.
Patreon and crowdfunding, or affiliate marketing,
Probably affiliate marketing out of
or
those three.
or if you've got something else, like if there's some sous chef there and you want to recommend something else, what would you ask for?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I tend to gravitate. I mean, we're talking about, intermediate advanced here. And so we need to, we probably need to hit on, I mean, we talked about YouTube and ad monetization on YouTube. Well, that's like a no brainer. That I wouldn't consider that intermediate or even advanced. It just
That's
happens
like the
when you create
training wheels
content.
that get you
Yeah.
kind of started to get to real money.
Crowdfunding with like memberships with like Patreon. Like for me, anything that there's an existing platform that you really have very little control over, to me is not an advanced or an intermediate strategy or an intermediate monetization revenue stream. To me, it falls more into those mechanisms that you put the work in, and again, using the context of YouTube ads, YouTube solicits the advertisers. They place the ads. They run the whole shebang. They just give you a cut, right? Um, for me, the more advanced is what are those things that the creator themselves are putting in the time and the effort in the work, but they're not giving away 20, 30, 40, 60% of the money that's coming into that. They get to keep the vast majority of it. And that would be on the sponsorship side, on the in-house advertising side. Um, what am I thinking? To an extent, affiliate stuff. To an extent, I mean, you do have control over uh, the links and the various methods in which you push those affiliate links and things. So just got a lot more control, I guess, with that. And so that's to me, I mean, being advanced, that's where I would more like to start is things that we can work on and we can do more rather than things that are out of our control. And right now, I think fan funding was a part of that. Right now, fan funding is absolutely in the toilet. And thank you, economy. I think is a lot of it. I completely understand. It definitely, I fan fund and support a lot of channels out there, and every time that hits those hit my bank account, I cringe a little bit, but I'm too stubborn to pull back on it because I understand how badly I need that funding from those folks that are loyal enough to stick around and fan fund, be that through Patreon or YouTube channel members or whatever. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite and pull mine from somebody else just because it's hurting so bad. Like it hasn't got to that point yet. Um, so just keep that in mind with fan funding. You're absolutely, it's one of them things. It sounds good, and in certain ways, fan funding can apply to what we're talking about with affiliate marketing or with sponsorships or with some type of direct involvement rather than through some type of other platform. But um, yeah, the method of that through some type of other platform, yeah, I don't think that's. I think that's like a built-in um, what would it be like a commonly known like built into the recipe type thing, right? It's not really thinking outside of the box or anything like that. And a lot of people think it's actually bigger than it is. I'm sure there's some niches and some creators that are able to leverage it better than others, but at the end of the day, you can't get blood from a turnip. And with fan funding, unfortunately, um, you're dealing with individuals and their individual financial situations and other things, and so it's a very volatile thing, I guess, is what I'm getting at with that. So things that are more inside the realm of our control is what I would prefer to focus on.
All right, so we've got some people out here who we know who might have specific questions. Feel free to ask them, and then if it's okay, we'll address them specifically as possible without getting into personal data or whatever. But if that's something that is of interest. Um, just wanted to say, I guess, that what you're talking about on as far as like the YouTube, and this can apply to other places. Facebook offers money for posting. Instagram will be, I think they'll still pay people for posting. TikTok pays you to post up there. YouTube has been one of the longer ones, one of the ones that's paid the most, the longest. In order, like Clover said when he broke it down, that YouTube is going out and is creating a system and then finding advertisers in one hand and content creators on the other hand, matching them up using their magic. And that's what their whole thing is really, is the matching things up. They do that with other asset facets of their Google. But when YouTube and specifically, they're finding advertisers, they're hooking us up, and they're taking a cut for that, which is fine because they're doing a lot of work there. Like Clover said, you can't.
Also, the control they hold right over that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is like
Yeah.
in our realm, it's not like we're really focusing on that too much. But if we were talking about typewriters or writing short fiction, or something else that YouTube wasn't against politically, then what we would do, and we could do it to some, like Clover said, to some extent here, maybe with camping or something, but stuff that's adjacent to shooting. But you can dance the way YouTube is looking for. So if YouTube is looking for long-term videos that are horizontal, focused on, I don't know, something like, the Coca-Cola Pepsi debate, because that's what, they're making a bunch of money on Coca-Cola, then, you do that dance, you do whatever they're looking for, and you have the potential to make a lot of money. We don't get that option so much over here in our gun realm, but like say, if you went to camping at the right time of year, yeah, you'd probably do real well, but you'd have to create content that's focused on that and not necessarily your content, not necessarily content that is to your goal or your objective, or if you have an audience, what they're looking for. So, when you'd have to adjust your audience, and so in other words, you'd adjust your own content um, topics in order to chase that. So that is possible, but when we're talking intermediate, that's why we disregard those. We're talking about those as they're nice if they work, but you don't want to necessarily chase them, and that's why I tried to explain there, because you have to chase them in order for those to work. So if you want to do what you want to do, there's more lucrative things. It just takes a bit to get to them or whatever. But since we're talking Patreon and crowdfunding, we did get Brooke had said Patreon. Let's talk. Patreon has connotation only because we'll get into that, I guess, or if you want, or if we've done this enough times. But Patreon has a lot of people. Let's see, I'm going to go find it on Wikipedia next time Clover's talking, but they're a huge platform that deals with a lot of money and a relatively small number of content creators. When you compare it to YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or any other giant platforms, very few of them are even using content. What do you call that? Crowdfunding or sponsored support. And the ones that are, they're not all using Patreon, and the ones that aren't all using it well. So there's just not that many people in the grand scheme of things using Patreon, and there's a lot of people using it to fund, using it to subscribe to things that they appreciate, using it to fund the things that they value. And like I said, I'll go look up the actual numbers, but it's quite massive. There are other platforms out there for people that don't like the Patreon one. But when we're talking about this section, we're talking crowdfunding. We're talking, what are they called? Patreon. A way for people to subscribe to your content, a subscription service.
Mhm.
Because the other ones that I'm thinking of, I think that's the only thing you would call them, is a way to support or to fund an ongoing project, as opposed to a Kickstarter or a um, Indiegogo or a GoFundMe, which are project based. They have a goal in mind, and once they reach that goal, sometimes they can go over, but they reach that goal and they're satisfied. Patreon and Subscribestar and Ko-fi and some of the others, those are the ones I use. There's a bunch of them out there at this point. Allow people to subscribe on an ongoing basis, right?
Yeah, locals has an aspect of that, and like we mentioned, YouTube has the memberships built in. Um, you're better off though. Again, this is where let's get into advanced, right? You're talking about platforms. You're beholden to the platforms being up. You're beholden to percentages they may take, and at the end of the day, you have the fickle beast that is the individual person out there, consumer, whatever. So you're going to have people that come in, and you're going to have people that come in. They're going to come and go, right? You're going to have people that come for whatever reason it is, and I like to think it's more of something on the finances side for those people. I mean, they want to support you, they want to do things, but when their grocery bill is 30% more than it used to be, I mean, they got to make up that 30% somewhere, and a lot of times that's supporting your channel or your projects, right? Unfortunately, and I get it, we got to take care of ourselves first. Um, so with that in mind, knowing that is a part of the landscape when it comes to fan funding, then why would you not set up some type of your own subscription system, right? We are talking advanced and intermediate here. Set up some of your own subscription system, and I will be the first to admit I don't have anything like this in play, but I've given it thought, um, and it's definitely doable. Where we've talked about in the past, you have your website, you have your hopefully if you're if you're thinking and talking about things from the advanced to intermediate side, hopefully if you don't already have a website, you're close to it. Very little control is given away when you have your own website. And through that, you have access to email list, you have access to other things to provide the added value, let's say, right, for that membership, for that fan funding membership side of things. And then so why not handle that as much as you can in house, right? And it would be similar to a lot of the, the folks that sell courses on things. It would be similar in that nature, except for you're not offering a course. You're offering behind the scenes. You're offering the personal interaction. I mean, I think of like Bill O'Reilly, for example, and his yes, he's still around out there on the internet, but he's got his a couple of different tiers of like niche club, and I forgot what they're called, but and you get depending on that tier, you get specific access directly to him, or you get maybe lower tier access. Um, I mean, of course, you get special content, discount rates on merch, and previews on upcoming um, things that he puts out, that sort of thing, right? And so it's not through any particular platform, and that's what I'm saying. There is room there. Let's go beyond all these platforms are out there. You can get on it. You can tell people. That's great. But when you're telling people and they keep bailing and they keep bailing, maybe the ones that are super loyal, that are through, uh, economic, through financial woes, bad times, which I think we're in one again, whatever, are still there. They're still, maybe let's say they're still your YouTube member or they're still your Patreon patron, even right now, when in the last year or two, um, you've lost 50, 75% of that membership just simply because of there's no other explanation really other um, than those money factors. Well, if you've got that type of loyalty, then would they be willing to come over to some type of system that you've set up where you can save that? Because Patreon used to be really cheap as far as their cut. And unless you're locked in, grandfathered in, that's not necessarily the case no more, right? And so, you're
What do you
giving
mean?
away
How much is it now for somebody who starts today?
somebody would have to go look that up, but the 10% that I'm locked in at, and a lot of us are because we were early adopters, um, it's not that way anymore. I mean, it's at least 15 and maybe even more now. Um, as far as I'm aware, but I haven't looked in forever because again, it's a system that is again it's beholden to the issues and the whims of those people wanting to support you. And so my point is, if you've got people that are loyal enough to stay with you through the thick and the thin, then are those people loyal enough to come over to some other thing that you have more control over, you get to keep more money out of, that sort of thing. So it's something to consider is all I'm saying.
All right. So Clover went like a couple of directions with that, but Patreon. So you already said he doesn't use an off his own system. So using your own system, one, you don't use your own system. You use an alternative system. Nobody builds their own system because then you'd have to deal with credit cards and encryption and stuff that nobody should be casually dabbling in. So you're going to go from Patreon to a different system, and there are other options out there. But you're not going to just take over running people's credit cards monthly and holding their credit cards on an account. Hopefully, you're not willing to share that information with someone who's taken that on individually. This is even in the back in the day that was
Well, that's the
risky.
processing side of it, though. That's a minimal thing on the
So, well, if we're
processing
talking
side.
about PayPal, setting up your own website with a bunch of PayPal buttons, then you've got the power and the history and the reputation of PayPal. That's one
This is
thing.
true.
But if you're talking about finding an open source thing like something that provides that service, then here's what I'll tell you. After running gun channels for 7 years, so running a channel like or running a thing like gun channels, which was a website software that ran on top of a server 24/7 with something like 1 million views a month. with however many active users, it's going to have constant maintenance, but then also very regular evaluation and and research to determine if we're using the best systems and stuff. So one of the decisions to quit doing it was because of all that behind the scenes effort that's required to make it seamless on the front end. So understanding the different payment options in something is I'm 3 years rusty on, but I'm 7 years veteran of. Again, you're never going to take someone's credit card yourself. You're definitely not going to do that over email. So you're going to have some system. And that's what I'm saying is these systems come and go. And as nice as some of them like to talk about, I mean, unless you're paying attention to them, you don't realize when they go. That you hear them come to the table because they make a big marketing effort. And, a lot of people usually jump from another platform where they've had trouble. They fill a gap, or they fill a demand, and they get a bunch of people onto their platform, and occasionally they stick around. But we all know that, like any business or any new venture. So that's my suggestion. When we're talking money and we're talking bringing people who are going to be subscribing to something that you're trying to do long term, unless you're doing something like small business related, unless you're doing something that is financially related, where the people involved are not, they're comfortable financially, but they're also willing to experiment with different platforms and different systems and different things because they're learning as well. But if you're asking a regular person, hey, show up to my meeting, but now it's here and now it's there and now it's there and now it's there and now it's there, like Clover said, they have to be very loyal to you in order to do that. So I guess what I was going to suggest is, well, one, worry less about the issues with the platforms. Like the percentage on Patreon is a minor issue compared to all the other issues you'd have with alternate sources. And part of those issues are their fly by nightness or the potential of that. But the other side of it is, let's say you've got someone who's interested in supporting projects. They have discretionary income that they can throw $20 towards subscriptions, and they're subscribing $5 to you, $4 to somebody else, $5 to the next person, $9 to somebody, whatever it breaks down to. And you say, I'd like to move to another platform for XYZ reasons. Now that person has to make a decision. I'm already dropping $20 easily on Patreon or whatever the platform is. Honestly, it doesn't matter. I'm just using Patreon because that's what we're talking about. But if it's YouTube membership, right, that's another popular one. Or if it's the Ko-fi or the Subscribe Star, if you're asking them then to drop to another place, again, that's a big ask potentially. And if we're talking a lot of people, that's one of those what ifs. So I think there's some advantage to sticking with things like Patreon and the YouTube membership, even though they take a cut. And they know that, and that's why they take a cut, because they offer the group, whatever you want to call it. Like there's so many people using their system that you've got that potential that if somebody's already here and they see the benefit of subscribing to Brooke and to Ghost, then they may want to, since it's so easy and you're right here anyway, subscribe to Clover as well, or the GunTube Academy or something like that. So I don't want to look at the negative sides of them only, and I definitely want to talk about the negative sides of the smaller platforms, especially an intermediate size thing. Now, if you're large and you've got the glue or whatever, that stickiness where people are going to follow you to places, you're doing something that needs to happen, and people are willing to go out of their way or do whatever is necessary to make sure that funding happens, then you can do whatever you want. But when we're talking intermediate, I think, and this isn't like the only way to go, but I'd say a factor is ease of funding versus we're talking about how much time you're going to spend on funding, 25% of your time. Well, if that funding place that you're on gives you a better cut, but only 25% of the people follow you over, or even if only 75% follow you over, now you have to spend a portion of your time crowdfunding essentially to get people on board to make up that 25% and hopefully more even, right? But I don't know. I've been checking for a bit, so I don't know if Clover's got anything on there, or if Patreon, or Brooke only said Patreon, so if she's got something more specific, question wise, or if anybody else has come up with something here, feel free.
No, I'm good. I know Ozzy had made a comment out there about being a terrible businessman, and I think that's a point to bring up just real quick.
Which one?
Is Ozzy out there somewhere? Let me see if I can find it. I did tag
That's
it,
one.
but yeah, it's irrelevant. I mean, he was just other than getting it on the screen, but um, I think that that's a step that everybody's going to have to take, and that's why we're talking at intermediate to advanced here. Is you're going to have to start approaching things from a more business minded um, perspective, um, whatever that might be, whether that's managing money or being able to budget things out, or since we're talking about monetization, sponsorships, and selling your own ad space and some things like that that we haven't talked about yet are in play. And with that, you have to learn to write proposals and wheel and deal with things like that, put certain media packages together for those things. And all of that is business related. So there may be, and I don't know if there's necessarily room to add anything to this particular series or not, but um, you know, uh, things that people need to be thinking about from that business side, and in that being in that business mindset, right? And there are great channels, there's great resources out there, for that type of thing. And my number one suggestion would be to start dabbling into, put aside some of the latest, pistol newest pistol release videos maybe, and watch some type of thing on running a business, and find some top 10 or top 5 things to pay attention to in business or something of that nature. And since we're talking about monetization and business has come up, thanks for that, Ozzy, by the way. Not really a whole lot we can discuss here because neither one of us are CPAs or financial advisors or anything like that, and certain uh, tax codes from state to federal level and whatever are different all across the country. Uh, but just throwing it out there, make sure as we're talking about monetization here, that you're paying attention. You have enough business savvy to understand that the more money you make, the more that tax man's going to smack you upside the head come first of the year. So uh, be aware that's a thing, and whether you have somebody that is in the financial sector as far as taxes, the CPA that can help you, or you have to seek that kind of thing out. Give some advice on that beforehand, depending on the what you're doing, the projects that you have, as well as the monetization mechanisms that you have into play, so that you know all the ins and outs. What kind of things can you write off? Like, is this a good idea? Does this idea make sense from a tax standpoint, or you're going to have more liability there than you're going to end up making in the long term. Just be real quick. Wanted to mention that because of what Ozzy threw out there.
Oh, that's a great point. And if we're talking advanced level, you're either doing this as your business or you don't want it to interfere with your business for sure, but it's probably costing you some time and money. So you definitely want to consider your tax situation and and get a accountant that's there are content creator accountants out there now who focus on this stuff as opposed to somebody who's winging it. So I want to stick with Patreon though, or at least I'm using Patreon again as a fill in the blank for the idea that you have an audience and that there's ways for that audience to subscribe to what you're doing. So find the platform that's comfortable for you. I really do encourage you to use the largest ones, Patreon or Subscribestar or YouTube, or I guess Facebook probably has something I'm just not familiar with. But those you're going to have the best potential for the size of audience, and you're going to get the least trepidation. Is that the right word? Like more people are going to be more comfortable, even if they don't like it. They're going to be more comfortable using something that's solid than something that you have more control of. Again, once I understand what Clover's saying, I'm just really, really gun shy of recommending anyone pursue, especially as part of your business plan. Once you're up and rolling and you've got multiple crew people and you can set someone who's competent to that task, and you've got people who can definitely jump on any kind of nefarious stuff that's happening, unintended, just snafu stuff, because that will happen, unintentional, just weird stuff will happen. And when you're talking money, you can really dissuade people from being a part of your project by being weird with their money. So there's a fee that you pay for the big systems, but for intermediate size, again, not when you're huge, but intermediate size, I'm saying, because we're talking about Patreon here, but we're also about to talk about you want multiple streams. So Patreon and YouTube membership essentially take it off the table for you. You can say, head over. There's a million people explaining it. Lots of people are already comfortable with it. You can essentially wipe your hands. You're done. Like Clover said, if you want to get to that 25% of your time spent on this,
Yeah.
why spend time researching and monitoring your own system at this point? So I'll quit harping on that. Patreon, there's different ways to use it. People use it to write books in every chapter. People get what am I trying to say? Subscribe to each chapter, $5 every time a chapter comes out. So that writer knows that every time they put out a new chapter, they've got an income source and they can start to rely on that, and they can start to write on a regular basis, or maybe start a second book or something. There's people that do it per podcast. I know very few people do that. Most people do it monthly, but there's different creative ways people use Patreon. And what that creates, what that fosters is a user group on platform that is a user group on Patreon on that platform that are understanding of the different ways people use it and actively participating in that. So think about, I'm a big fan of growing mushrooms. Growing mushrooms at home is something that over the last few years has taken off, and there's tons of projects out there to create different versions, essentially to grow mushrooms at home. They just drill a bunch of holes in a log and pour some mushroom juice in there, and then you just give it the right conditions. Put it in your basement, put it in the garage or something in the dark, and boom, mushrooms come out of it, and you're eating mushrooms for essentially free, whatever it costs you to buy that log, right? And then you can make them out of sawdust. So it's some version of a bag of sawdust or a log. And that means somebody's got to sit around somewhere and do that, drill a bunch of holes in logs, and that's some small business somewhere. So I'm a big fan of those kind of things. And when you're a fan of those things, when you start to dig into them, you can see how the different, how the successes and stuff and the failures, unfortunately. So you hang out on that platform, and every once in a while I'll search for mushrooms and see what kind of projects are out there. And when there's something to fund, I fund it because it's a fun hobby for me. I'm sure people that are into racing or guitars or something are similar. So you want to be on a platform. Another advantage to being on a platform is to, be able to be part of that. But then you want to make that part of your project. You just say, "Hey, I'm on Patreon." That's like saying, "Hey, I've got PayPal." But if you don't give people your PayPal a button or an address, it's asking a lot for someone to figure out how to go to PayPal and make you a donation. It's almost, is it even possible? Like, you really have to give people a path. So same with Patreon, I guess is what I was getting at, is there's lots of people using it in different ways, and being aware of that, maybe just go hang out on Patreon and see what other people are doing, even if it's a different thing completely. Maybe it's something like barbecue, or I don't know, something else completely, mowing the lawn. There's people that go around and mow the lawn for people. You ever seen those projects? Somebody will just have like a lawn care, like a yard care type of outfit, like a big truck rig thing. They'll drive up to somebody's house and offer to clean their yard. They film it, and then there's people that subscribe to that and dig it because they're essentially giving away free lawn care to people that need it. I mean, that's the kind of fun stuff that's out there. There's probably people that just put away shopping carts, right? And people are paying them $1 or $2 a month just to watch them do it and have fun. So part of it is that. I did look it up on Patreon. It's been a while since I did this. The last time I looked it up was probably the 2017 numbers, where they had 50,000 active creators, 1 million monthly Patreons, and $150 million. So that's $10 million a year being passed between Patreons, people who want to support, and those 50,000 creators. So something like, what do we say, $10 million going to 50,000 creators. The ratio there was insane years ago, right? Well, what's the ratio now? In 2022, Patreon announced that they have more than 250,000 creators. So that's gone up by 5 times. So there's 250,000 creators on Patreon now, but there are 8 million Patreons. So the one side has gone up by 5. The Patreon side, the supporters, have gone up by 8. And they're in 200 countries. It doesn't say the money, but unless the money went down. We assume it's some number bigger than a $10
You
million
got to think
a
it.
month going out.
Yeah, not really. I mean, the average we've seen the average per patron hold pretty steady, so I wouldn't think that
So
would
I
be the
think when
case.
it comes down to Patreon, we could have a whole show on this because we're already 40 minutes in and we've essentially been talking about it. But
Right.
there's lots of strategies. You've got newsletters, you've got updates, you've got things when you travel, you've got all kinds of ways that you can create opportunities in Patreon to say thanks to your patrons, to let them know what they're supporting so that they understand it. And then, well, I won't get into it anymore but that. But there's Patreon, I think, is a great way um, to harness the potential of that audience that wants to support something like what Brooke is doing, with the Suicide
Yeah.
Prevention Saturday. Without getting too much into it, she could have one portion of her Patreon for that and another portion for the school, another portion for the advocacy work, and people could support, a combo of two or all three, and you'd find that you're going to then have people from three different realms out there spreading the word about that Patreon page, and you're going to find people, from three different sources coming in. But we could have a talk about that if it's worth having maybe multiple pages. I don't think any of her stuff is, what's the word, like contradicts each other. So I think it all kind of benefits, it all amplifies each other. But there might be some advantage to having more than one Patreon for some people.
So, so let's shift gears into something else
Sure.
because yeah, I think we've devoted way too much time to Patreon, quite honestly. And I'm not knocking Patreon. I'm just saying for what I think that the
When they're
vast
talking
majority,
overall funding, you're right, because it's probably a portion of a 25% of your overall
yeah,
funding.
yeah. And let's jump back into the whole intermediate advance and things that we can hustle on and we can make happen and we can do, right? And one of those things is the whole sponsor ad placement thing. I don't want to overlook at over that or gloss over that because I think that that's almost untapped frontier in a way. And at the risk of having competition in that space, I'm hesitant to even talk about it here, but I'm going to. And this year has been, I would say, very successful for me in that area. Uh, Now, I could put together a $999 course and bring privately people in that want to learn this, but yeah, we're going to give you some nuggets, or I am here for free on this. Um, Let me say this: the one thing that I hear when we talk about whether it's, and I view like sponsorship ad placement as kind of the same thing. I mean, to get sponsorship and say this podcast is powered by so and so, right? Or whether you put a mid roll ad, hey, let's take a break from reviewing this new gun and talk about our friends over at so and so, right? To me, it's like the same thing. It's in the same vein. You still approach the companies basically the same way. One of the things that I hear all the time is folks, they're so used to, and we spent 40 freaking minutes on Patreon, so I get it. Creators out there or whatever, they're so used to whether it's the YouTube ad money or there's Patreon where they basically put up a shingle and they start getting some money. They mention something fleeting here and there, like, oh, I'm on Patreon or a link down below to Patreon. And the next thing you know, they're getting some money, right? And you get lazy. And I say that with all the love in the world. But there's no replacement for the hard work and the hustle. And so people go, oh, I wished I had a sponsor for so and so. Oh, shucks, I wish I had if it will. Get off your butt and make it happen. Because if you do, you can make it happen. Um, there are a few ways and or a few things that you need to be able to do. And the first thing is realizing that first of all, companies in our sector, Second Amendment, firearm, outdoor, whatever, they need to be kicking in and they need to be sponsoring and advertising and helping out the creators in the industry. And more I see the media marketing side and the firms in the industry understanding that concept, right? And that's a good thing. And that's why I say I think we're on some untapped frontier or whatever to an extent. It's a little bit still open out there, but um, lost my train of thought, unfortunately. Dadgummit. So the the thing is, you've got to, the number one thing is realizing that these companies have obscene, it's the word I'm going to use, and she knows what I'm talking about. Obscene amounts of money, like things you getting $5 a month from some dude on Patreon, right? Great, wonderful. These companies have 5 figures, 6 figures a month they're spending on their advertising budgets. Obscene amounts of money. So there's money out there. That's not a problem. Is the money there? The answer is yes. Um, the issue that most have, and again, it gets into people being able to sit down and being able to put in the work. Those companies are not going to just, some companies might. You might walk up, and I'm going to use Brooke as an example out there, right? Because I think she's a great example in doing good things. Brooke could walk up and Brooke could go, "Hey, I'm Brooke Cheney. This is my, thing, and I'm educating, people, and I'm all about the mental health, and need help with my project, and blah blah blah." And is she going to find a company that goes, "Oh, wow, that sounds really really awesome. Um, what do you need from us?" Well, need some money. Oh, well, let's break out the checkbook. Sign, sign, sign. Here you go. Yeah, that can happen. We've seen that happen, but everything is business related, and it's going to be a trade off, right? It's going to be a this for that. Um, you know, the pleasure of them supporting a great organization, that's a component. But at the end of the day, they're going to question, like, what are we getting, right? People are selfish, and that goes partly into the fan funding side of things a little bit too. But at the end of the day, it's a human nature thing, and it's especially true in business when they're watching the bottom line. So what I'm saying is, tons of money's out there. Instead of, "Oh shucks, I wished I could get," put some things together, put some packages together of what you can offer them for their money to support your projects. Now, is that the food sponsor at the next event? Is that the travel sponsor to get to this place over here? And here's what's cool about the travel sponsor type stuff. You do some type of travel sponsor thing, you make an event, you make more contacts, you cut more advertising and sponsorship deals. So you just got paid by a company to go somewhere and get more money from other companies. Like, so how freaking awesome is that, right? The problem is, like I said, it takes time to sit down and figure this out. Like, what type of content am I making, right? There's no reason that, again, gonna pick on Brooke, gonna use her as an example. There's no reason with her little videos that she's putting out, she can't have some type of industry related mid roll ad segment that she pushes to them and sells, right? Be that some type of a company that's into competition. And I'm drawing a blank on names, but I mean, you fill in the gap with whatever company that is. And since we're on that idea of companies, right? Um, don't chase. Well, let me back up. Don't spend all of your time chasing the big, huge, like unobtainiums. Look for the ones that you offer a better value. So, no offense to Brooke out there, but does Brooke have the same value to Glock as she does to XYZ, been in the scene for a few months, making some really kind of innovative products that not many people know about at this point? Yeah, that's
Yes,
two
you're
totally
picking a
different.
bad example though.
What's
Brooke
that?
Suicide Prevention Saturday is unique, and nobody has done that for as long as she's been doing it. Nobody except for Barely Walk the Talk America has even talking about mental health, and they're fairly specific. They've got a lane they're in. Brooke is doing something that's untapped. So you just picked a bad example, but a
I'm
regular
talking
person walking
about,
up to Glock has done. I've known regular people that have walked up to Glock and walked away with multiple guns. So you, there's advantages and disadvantages. I think I'm going to interrupt you. Um, I like I know where you're going, but
well, I'm not
uh,
talking about guns. I'm talking about cutting checks.
all
So
right. Well,
we're
one way,
talking
one
about two
or
different
one,
things.
six of one or the other. If you got
Not
six
really, but I hear
guns,
you.
then well, it is because you can sell those and you can use them. So we're talking about funding, we're talking about monetization, but let's also remember that what Patreon, what you've created is not just an audience, but you've created people who are participating in your project. When you have a sponsor, you're getting paid by them, yes, but you have them on your jersey. You've got them on board. They're giving you credibility, right? It's a two-way thing. So you get to then uh, work with them, right? You've got opportunity there,
It's a relationship, and
right?
that's where I was
So
going to go with this too. Is it only takes a few and it snowballs, right? It's like the dating scene, so to speak, right? You get these sponsors that come on, and they don't even have to be big ones, but you get other companies that start to see, and especially if you're pitching to them, right? But they start to see, oh wait, hold on a minute, like this person comes in, I don't really know this person, but oh my God, for like 2 years now, they've had look at all these, they've got 12. They go at, they look at your content, whatever, right? And they go, oh my God, they've got like 10 freaking companies over the last couple of years that have, bought
right,
mid-roll ads, that have sponsored, that is, wow, if these other companies are doing it, right? So you look more attractive to them, right? It's like if every week, whatever, you go out and you've got a different high value man on your arm, right? Or something. And it's like, whoa, wow, that chick can get all kinds of, she can get any guy she wants. Like, and so it creates that, I don't know, what is the word? Like,
well, I'm going to say reputation because I
the
don't think that
appeal.
you're
Yeah.
looking at this 100% because there's also the reputation of, wow, this guy can't keep a sponsor. So I know a couple of people who are in the industry that
This is
have
true.
horrible reputations
This is
and
true.
they're around because of these cycles. We don't have, not everyone sticks around. Gun owners that stick around aren't paying attention, and the gun owners that pay attention leave. And I think it's because they get worn out of the stuff. But essentially, there's a couple of people who are brand names out there who are, well, there's a lot of the brand names are awesome, but a couple of the brand names are so tired and worn out, and they're just making a living by burning their bridges, going from here to moving from there. They don't put their, you don't see them having a liturgy or whatever of here's all the pieces I've worked with. So that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to put out there. When you have an
This is
opportunity, when
true.
you're
Yeah.
creating content, you are one of a few people. You've got an opportunity to work with someone in the industry. You're doing more than getting paid by them. You have an opportunity to work with them. Now, that person you're working with is probably a person, and that person may have authority there. You may know a couple of people there, but guess what? Time happens, and then those people typically move on. The people who do the marketing and stuff, they don't lose their skill set. So when a company gets rid of them for whatever reason, the company gets bigger or smaller, changes direction, hires somebody, they get so large that they hire somebody out. Somebody's so successful at marketing that they get hired out,
Right.
or I mean that the company hires out a bigger marketing firm and now they're on their butt and now they're getting hired by the next company. If you have these relationships, now those can flame
Yep.
up and those can burn out. Those aren't gold. Those are just one of the many things you got going on. You can have relationships with companies that last through 6 marketing people, and you can have relationships with marketing people that can last through 6 companies. What's better for your overall? Like Brooke said, have a 5 year, 5 week, 5 year, 5 month plan, because the people that are drifting are drifting. And when you drift for a certain amount of years, you gain experience, but you haven't gained ability to do what you want.
Well,
So having the smallest sponsor consistently and doing something repetitively and getting good at it, so that when you become the expert in your field, you bring that sponsor up, you're going to have sponsors licking your shoes a whole different way than when, but there's a lot to
yeah.
this. That's why I just wanted to, I'm not
Well,
saying one way is different or better. They are different, but I'm not saying they're in one way is better, I guess. I'm just saying
yeah.
that there's lots of ways to approach this. And when you are becoming a part of this, again, you're intermediate, when you are a part of the industry, you're having a reputation, you're gaining experience, but you're also, people aren't not paying attention to you. If you're doing stuff in front of people, you're getting a reputation out there. So going from company to company, whoever's
Yep.
willing to sponsor you will only last for so long. Now you can do that. We know a couple of people who did that. Pay me for everything, and my hand's always out for getting paid. But they didn't look at what. Anyway, so there's a lot to this.
Well, yeah, there is, and that's why we're in an intermediate advanced series here, by the way. So, keep track if you've got, if you're in replay or whatever, because we haven't said that yet, but if you're in replay, the replay world or whatever, remember that you can comment below, and you can also reach out, and we can add to this series if we need to. Seems every show we come up with some things that, hey, we could, dive deeper into this particular thing. Um, what I'll say about, I'm glad you brought up the bridge burners, because it can seem that way. I've had different sponsors for the last 3 or 4 seasons on my podcast. It's not because I've burned bridges. It's because, and they know this, the companies know this because I have a relationship with every single company that has been a sponsor, right? I've got that relationship, so there's that communication factor that's going on. And they understand that, as when I push out these proposals, these advertising packages, these sponsorship packages, I don't send them out to just one company. And if you don't buckle down, if you don't make that decision, like, it's business, it's not personal. If you don't make that decision, you're not the sponsor of this go around. Like, I can't sit around and wait on you to decide and make a decision. And as long as the communication is there and they understand that, right? It's fine. And it's like, next time maybe they buck up, or maybe it's a situation to where you get more and more response and more offers. I know in my case, in my situation, that's been the case. And there's been some companies that I've reached out to, and they're like, man, we can't afford it. And I'm like, well, so and so company's offering me XYZ. Like, I can't take half the money to do you anymore. I can't. It's like saying, okay, it's like the difference between, you know, paying Harrison Ford to act in your movie prior to Star Wars or Indiana Jones, than it is nowadays, right? Like, it's gonna cost different money now. It's just, that's the way it goes. In most of the media marketing people in most of the companies, again, if you practice good communication, if you have that relationship, what I think is super important, um, and then you have that communication, then I don't think the whole bridge burning is a problem, like the outside looking in. Now, that being said, in other words, they look and they go like, "Oh, well, Brooke, look at Brooke. I mean, she, over the last year, she's done mid-roll ads or sponsored videos for 10 different companies." Well, that's part of the equation. That's outside looking in. But then, if that company is truly plugged into the industry, and industry people talk, um, I don't know if that's
Yeah,
a
the
little known secret or
hallway.
not,
Yeah, the
but
hallway connection is where you got to worry about it.
yeah,
Not so much the audience going, "Oh,
yeah,
I perceive 10 different
right.
things." But
Well,
if the industry
yeah,
gets the word around that that person's not going to help you,
true.
they're not going to help you anymore.
But that's what I'm saying. The industry people talk, and the industry people talk in a good way as well as the bad way. So if so and so company XYZ, you pitch them, and then they see, oh crap, well, so and so ABC company on Brooks show, or sponsored Brooks show. I know so and so over there. Hey, what do you know about this? This is a question that I get a lot from companies, even, that it's like, hey, what do you know about this person? So they're reaching out to other creators, content creators, or whatever, too, not just people in the industry, and asking, like, what do you know about this? And so if you've got a good relationship, that's what I'm saying. You don't have that bridge burning aspect, even though you've done multiple things. You're just spreading it around. Um, then it's a different situation, because they're going to pick up the phone, or they're going to whatever. They're going to fire up an email,
Well,
and the
burning
person over at
bridges
the
is
company
when
goes,
we
"Oh,
do
we've
it.
had we've had great. Oh man, it was great working with Brooke, man. She was awesome." And blah blah blah. Okay, cool. And they cut a check, and you move on.
But burning bridges is, I think, when you instigate it, like, that's it, I'm done. We're never working together again. And then, like, just sour grapes or whatever would be like when the other side has an issue.
Or
And they
not
don't
fulfilling
always
your
have
commitments.
what?
Or not fulfilling your commitments, right?
Well,
That's an issue
I'm
I've seen
talking
too.
even if you did, like, if you everything happened, they may just be like, for whatever reason they didn't like it,
Hmm.
and they're never going to work with you again. But they're not necessarily obligated to come tell you that.
Yeah.
That's all I guess I'm getting at, is like, that's the one factor that you don't get. Like, you can know when you end it, burning
Hmm.
bridges, but I don't know if, I'm just saying, on the other side of that is when they decide to end it and they're never going to work with you again. They're never. I mean, you may not get a reply to their contacts, but you're not necessarily going to get a
Right.
contact from them that says, "Hey, guess what? We're never working together again, and quit calling us." So
Hmm.
that's,
Right.
well, part of the game, right? You got to know when that happens or
Well,
what. But
it's a matter of
essentially,
deciphering. It's a matter of deciphering whether they've done that and they wrote you off, or it's just a lack of communication. And that's why I say it. First, it starts with the trying to establish some type of relationship. Second is the good communication. And then if that's the case, then, a lot of times, yeah, you're gonna have to do, either the company is gonna do something wildly crazy. Let's say in Brooks' case, they fund some radically anti-Second Amendment legislation, and Brooks like, whoa, wait, I can't be associated with you if you do this, right? So Brooke would initiate it, right? Or maybe Brooke has went down, and I can't see this. I'm just throwing it out as an example because we've been using Brooke this whole show. But maybe Brooke does something on a show that they're not comfortable with, right, from an advertising standpoint. But if you've got good communication, they're going to go, whoa, wait a minute, like this ain't this ain't good, and we're not comfortable with this, right? And putting it out there, and letting folks know, and it works the same. It's a very similar situation to, you get sent a product, and it's like, hey, we want you to test this out. We're don't release any videos or let anybody know until such and such date, blah blah blah, right? And then you get it and you immediately throw up a freaking video on it. Well, that's dumb, right? Or I'll give you another example. You get it and you get it a month or two in advance of when you can release any content, and you work with it and you go, whoa, wait a minute, this thing's got an issue. Like, I'm having this and this and this problem, right? No communication, and then you put out a video going, "Oh, what a piece of crap! This is a turd," and blah 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 blah, and it's got this problem, and you haven't contacted the company to let them know, like, "Hey, whoa, whoa, wait! You sent me this, and in a few weeks I've got to drop a video on this or whatever, or a month, and I'm having this issue. So, like, Oh, yeah, we had to redesign this, or that's an issue we found with a particular lot number. What's the serial number on that? Oh man, yeah, that fell within this particular part that we was sourcing, and they dropped the ball on that, and here, let's get you the replacement part, or let's replace it all together. When these release, the companies by and large want to release products that are right when they release them to the public, and that is a thing. But again, you see that communication gap where you'll get as far, creators will get as far as getting product. We're talking about product. We shift gears a little bit from the checks, but they'll get the product, and then they'll just slam their dog all over it, and they've never once talked to the company about, like, hey, what's going on? Why is this way? What's going on? And you may be the only person that's having that issue, so there may be something you're doing wrong, even. That's entirely possible, or something you have done. Um, so just keep that in mind, that communication, man, I can't stress communication enough. I see such a lack of communication, and I think that can add to the burned bridges uh, area of kind of what we've been talking about.
So I was going to say to the when you kind of started that one, that another way to prevent that or eliminate that, hopefully from even being an issue, would be having a conflict of what you did versus what they expected. Is having a good set of expectations. We're going to talk about a media kit here in a second. So uh, having already literally written out, communicated what you're planning to do, and what their obligation, what their funding, and what their what their contribution is, and what their role in it is, and then create a way of contacting, so that they don't feel, if there is an issue, that they don't understand how to deal with that, how to react, how to contact you, or how to deal, how to whatever might happen. So, the other thing is, if you're not doing political stuff, it's probably not going to happen. It's usually what we're both kind of thinking about with there is something political or something to get said in a live thing, and somebody might have objections. So you can pretty much see what other people have done in that realm and just write some clauses in there. Hey, maybe a 3 strikes and we're out, or so that hey, you can tell us when we're over the line 3 times before there's really anything. Something you can come up with if you're concerned about that. But anyway, setting expectations ahead of time, and then that way, you're not doing something that they didn't anticipate, and vice versa. Let's move into merch. So we talked about monetizing, and there's different strategies. We didn't really talk about the pros and cons. I guess we have been, kind of talking about pros and cons, but we didn't specifically sit down and bullet point pros and cons or anything. We talked a bit about Patreon, and kind of that was again the analogy for most crowdfunding, that concept of having a bunch of people subscribe. And then we talked a bit about having sponsorship. Affiliates, though, that's a little bit different, and that's where you have a middleman, I suppose. Sponsorship, but you have someone in between who finds the sponsor and arranges with you how to display or push that sponsor's information out, and it's typically more of a piece of real estate on your website or something like that. So affiliate marketing is another option that is essentially a blend or a hybrid between like a YouTube monetization and a direct sponsorship. It's a YouTube monetization outside of YouTube that isn't owned by YouTube by Google. So
Right.
you can find a couple of different ones out there in our realm, but neither one of us really want to dig into that too far. But when we're thinking about multiple streams, that's certainly one of them. And some people are going to be different than Clover and I, and they're going to make a lot of money on the affiliate things for whatever reasons, the way they do their thing, and they're going to have a different opinion of this. So our opinion is our opinion for sure, and there's definitely good examples of the complete opposite of what we think out there, of what we've been successful with. But let's talk merch. There's so many options for merch nowadays where you can create a design, you can do your logos, you can have a funny inside joke. Uh, New York Outcast is out there. We could have a salad or something, and where nobody else is going to understand it. There could be a salad T-shirt, and G23 could have a salad T-shirt with a line through it, like a no salad T-shirt, and those things could sell dozens. You could sell dozens of them to just people who understand the joke, and it doesn't need to support you for life, but it's an opportunity to bring in what's a dozen times five, $60 for an inside joke. And that's not paying all your bills, but it's buying you some ammo. It's making it a little easier to get to the gun show, or maybe you add that up a few times, and now you can actually pay for some part of the gun, shot show or something. So you can do merch on YouTube now. There's all kinds of merch opportunities. So I don't know. Again, we're talking intermediate, so I'm assuming by intermediate time, someone has at least done their own logo stuff with some sort of a merchandising thing. But what do you think about the merch side of it?
Merch is okay. Merch. The problem that I've got with merch is we get back into a fan funding style mentality. And so you can't get blood from a turnip. And how many people are out there that's able to buy merch? Merch is more, instead of just throwing money at Patreon and maybe getting some early release videos and some special communication with you or something like that. Now they're getting something tangible in their hand is really the only difference, and it's dependent upon the financial economic situations of those people being able to do that. So um, can I'm not saying money can't be made, and I'm not saying that should not be part of the diversity strategy as far as your revenue streams and your monetizations. That's what I'm saying. But personally, and this is based on a lot of personal experience too, I see a lot less merch. And I'll give you an example. I did, I did a push here a while back, and I'm wondering if they're even still on the website at this point, but probably not. I literally took X number of patches, and I pulled a G-Webs move, and I hid a $10 bill in one and a $5 bill in the other. And I said, "Hey, anybody's interested in patches, just so you know, randomly you're gonna get a patch, and then two random patches. There's literal cash in there. You know how many of those I've sold or I did sell? Zero, zero. I can't tell you the last time I've sold any merch. Um, and it's been frustrating because I've pushed merch, but it's the same frustration as the fan funding side, right? Like I'm frustrated, but then at the same time, it's like I get it because I don't typically go in and buy a lot of merch. That doesn't mean there's not people that won't, and
Dude,
so that's why I
how
say that
often do you
need
wear
and
your own shirt though, and how often you wearing like Scooby Doo or something else,
yeah, well,
Speed Racer or something like that?
yeah, maybe. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I still don't think it would make a whole
You
lot of
wear your
difference. I
own
mean,
hats though.
below every video. Here's the other thing: I've got the merch shelf below every stinking video,
Yeah, so
and
do
I
I.
don't
It
and I
doesn't
and
work
I
for none
don't
of us.
sell merch, so it's right there below the
But
video
neither
every
one of
single
us
time.
say stuff about it. Like, hey, buy our stuff at the bottom of the screen. Like, none of us
Now
say stuff.
this is true. I mean, this is true. So it has it's
Well, and
it
since we're
has its
talking
good and its
intermediate,
bad.
if you really wanted to move merch, you would do stuff like, hey, the first person that puts the new shirt on Instagram, blah blah blah. Of the 5 people that put this shirt on Instagram this week, the new shirt, then we'll do something at the end of the week. You can encourage sales by incentivizing sales. It's just that I don't know of any of us that in our group that's our motivation.
Right.
But that's because we're talking about an audience of 60, maybe, if we're lucky, 100, right? And, so that means there's 10 people motivated to purchase something or that are able financially to purchase something with that size audience. When your audience is 300, your audience is 3,000. When your audience is 30,000, you drop merch. You don't have to think about it. It's $2,000. Oh, I dropped a new shirt, $3,000, and then a trickle, because it isn't like people are dying to own your shirt. But when you mention it, people who have discretionary income don't even think about it. Oh, yeah, I need a new shirt anyway. Or, oh, that's funny. Let's go buy it. And that's just scale. So at our scale, yeah, merch is like asking the people that are already our subscribers, who are already participants in our crowdfunding, to then buy our hat. So that's a little much. But when the scale is 10 times bigger, 5 times bigger, then it's a little bit different. Hey, remember, we got hats for sale. And now every single show, you're selling 3 hats. What are 3 hats? $15? Every single show, $15. It's a whole different story about how much your shows are worth to you. What's a sponsor going to give you per show? And how much, divide that by $5, and that's how many hats that's worth. You could be your own sponsor.
Right. Yep. I do good. When when we're talking merch, I do good. I do pretty good with my hats, but I get my hats local too. And the
And you're
problem
wearing your
is,
hats all the time.
yeah, I do. I do pretty regular. But they're very good quality. They're amazing. I get them local. The problem is I don't make much on them. Like literally, I mean, I don't make hardly anything on a hat because I'm getting them local, and I like the idea of supporting, and I'm able to have a little more control over the quality and everything else. But especially by the time I ship them, I mean, I got the cost of the box that they need to go in to keep them getting crushed because they are a structured cap, which I prefer a structured cap. Um, so you got the cost in a box to be able to ship them safely, and then the cost of postage is always going up. Everybody knows that, and then the cost of materials and the other things. And so being able to keep the various colors in stock, that's the problem that I run into with merch, and especially with something like that. um, is the quality control, and then let's say your various SKUs or variants, right, is a problem because I'll take and I'll say, oh man, like I ran out of the green ones really quick, and I've got to get them like 12 at a time. And I'm like, I ran out of the green ones real quick. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get two less black ones and two more green ones this go around, and then you run out of black ones, right? And you're like, God, and then you've got green ones that just sit and sit and sit, and you're like, you can't, it's you can't. I'm not in the cat hat business, right? It's like I'm not a a retail clothing outlet. So it's hard to track and know what's going to sell and what's not going to sell from any given time when I get them in, you know. And because I've got to get them 12 at a time, I can't do pre-order. The turnaround's pretty quick. So I think most people that would order would be okay with, it was a day or two before they shipped. But the problem is I would have to get 12 orders basically because I can mix and match colors and stuff. I would have to get like 12 orders. So it could be a hassle, but at the same time, and it can be not super lucrative, but at the same time, just throwing that out there. If there's anybody local that does some of that stuff to give a little more control, we were talking about control over the platforms. Uh, that's a thing. Um, Before we start winding down, G, you were talking about media packets, wasn't you earlier, or press kits or media kits?
Sure.
Are we gonna hit on that at all before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people are going to jump in after the show and how big a hurry you're in, but
Well, I'm
yeah,
sure
that's a
there's a
pretty
lot.
big chunk.
It's a pretty big chunk of monetization. You can't. I think who said it? Somebody said it earlier. Was it Brooke? If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So if you just want people, if you expect people to come up and drop money on your lap, that's pretty big expectation since that's not the norm. So that's not the way things work normally. So you in capitalism and in the industry, you need to do something and then let people know what you're doing and maybe what you're gonna do once you've done something to show that you can do stuff. You're allowed to talk about what you'd like to do, and then you can write that down, give it an elevator speech, essentially something you can hand people that's better than a business card and less than a booklet, and be able to walk away and be able to offer that at an event or over a phone call, right? Like if you happen to meet somebody in that kind of situation, that's essentially what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, it talked a little bit when I was talking about the sponsor and the advertisers, in-house advertising stuff earlier. I don't have a media kit per se. I mean, I've got a media kit, but my media kit is more for I've already secured something more than anything. So that contains FFL information, that contains some demographic data, that contains IDs, that contains what I do, contains some tax information related to my media business, that sort of stuff, right? Um, in the context of kind of monetization and what we're talking about here,
Do you give them logos and headshots and stuff for them to use when they're referring to you, their relationship with you?
you know what? That probably needs to be added to the mix, quite honestly. So I might look into it. Doesn't take long to add to that particular packet. So that's a great idea. I've never really considered that too much. It's more of an afterthought. Maybe listing out some social media links and other things in there as well. Um, but in the context of what we're talking about here, which is monetization, which is revenue, which is getting the money. What I was talking about earlier with the proposals, right? So what I've got a series of, as I think of, I told you earlier, everybody, I said, you know, plenty of money out there in the industry available. You've got to give them something to spend that money on. And so that's what my proposals are. And every time I come up with, oh man, this would be kind of neat. I can do this and this and this, and I can lace their advertising in, or it can be powered by this company or whatever. Um, then that's a separate file I've got, and I could always tweak and modify that a little bit from one project to the next or one situation to the next, right? So I've got several of those documents, right, that are templates basically at this point, that I can go in and change. And they all start out the same. It's like, proposal for blah, blah, blah. And it says, hey, we're seeking, we've got a great opportunity, is usually how I word stuff like that. I want to make it seem as though, which is the case, but like, hey, you're going to benefit from this too. Got a great opportunity here for blah 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 blah. And then I'll go into, let's just say it's the podcast. I'll go into, with this podcast, you know, we typically expect this number of downloads within 30 days and yada yada yada. And then I go into the details of what how much you're going to spend, and what I have for you to spend money on and how much that costs, basically, right? And then below that, I have some additional demographic data, like this many men, this many women. We expect this many episodes. Any type of package deal thing, I always run a special package. Like the more you do, kind of the less it costs. So if I get somebody that before the podcast season starts, since I'm talking in that context, before the podcast season starts, I get people that are companies that they want to buy out every projected episode. So let's say I've got 12 episodes that I'm thinking are going to happen, at least 12. It's like, okay, well, if you commit to all 12 that I'm thinking is going to happen, and I book 13 or 14 or 15, then you get those for free. I'm not going to come back. I'm not going to ask you for my money. We'll just call it done. Right. And so that's an even better deal on their part when they're seeing that. They're like, oh, crap. Okay, well, there's a potential we can get even more value for our money here, out of this. So that could work in the negative as well, because I've had some companies that have drug their feet on it, and it started out they could have got 16 episodes for the cost of 12. And because they drug their feet on it, as I booked more episodes and reached new people, I raised the catch all threshold on that. Like, there's no sense in me giving, I will honor my word to anybody I sent that to previously. But, some new company or whatever, like, yeah. And so they really miss out in that instance. So, but yeah, that's a difference between a media packet, I guess, and then your proposals. And I see in what we're talking about here with monetization, I see those proposals, which do incorporate and contain elements of a media packet. I see those proposals being more important.
I don't want to. I don't have much to add to that. We're about getting towards the end. Let's. I think another thing to bring up, if it's unless you wanted to keep going with that, like I said, I don't really want to necessarily object anything, or I would just be repeating if I said it again.
We can
But
grab
the
a couple of,
well, some comments. But I was just going to say the
yeah.
last thing, or another thing, maybe not the last thing, but another thing that we haven't hit yet is along the same lines that people aren't just walking up to drop money in your lap unless you put out a sign that says I need money, and then guess what, people drop money in your lap sometimes, right? So it's the same kind of thing. If you want to have sponsors on your podcast, then it's probably a good idea to every once in a while say we have sponsor spots available and here's what you get for it. If you know somebody that's interested, let them know. We have audiences, and those audiences either are businesses or work with businesses and stuff. So or have conversations
Oh,
with
oh
people.
snap. So yeah, one thing let me point out real quick.
Sure.
Um, there are companies that have in-house media marketing people, and there's companies that farm that out to media marketing firms. When we're talking about building these relationships, going to these events, meeting with people, don't just focus on the companies, right? Company XYZ that makes a gun or a holster or whatever. Seek out and understand some of the media marketing firm, who they are, that um, that because here's why, and look for those folks and talk with those folks and start to build a relationship with those folks at some of these shows and different events, or whether you cold call or reach out email or whatever. And here's the reason is you've got multiple companies under their umbrella. So you can reach out to them and let them know a lot of times, hey, I've got this opportunity going on for, sponsorship or whatever. And then they can forward that out, blast that out to the 10, 12, 20 companies that they deal with. And so it's kind of uh, sometimes that can be an easier way to handle it rather than sending things out 20 different, emails or proposals to 20 different companies, and it coming from their marketing firm can hold a little more weight as well, because they're already paying that marketing firm and making money. I mean, paying that marketing firm, and that marketing firm's goal obviously is to get them more exposure and this, that, and the other, and they know that. And so um, yeah, I'd say they can hold a little more weight, and it's one of them things where it alleviates a little bit of the groundwork that you got to do, and that's not always the case. Doesn't always work out, but you know, just something to keep in mind is all I'm saying.
And then I'll just mention that if you've got merch, especially if you're in a situation like Clover where he's buying it instead of doing merch on demand or print on demand, then take some of that extra with you when you get in an agreement with somebody and shake hands, hand off some of that merch, and then they've got something to point at, something to remember you by, and it's just always cool to get a little something. So it's one of the reasons we get merch is to spread the word. So don't forget about your sponsors when you're spreading the word. Handing them a stack of stickers is different than
Stickers,
just
patches,
taking a check.
those types of things. Yeah, yeah, totally. I've done that many multiple times, and usually they enjoy that. I will say one time I'm waiting. I gotta get a hold of this guy to show eventually. I don't know if they'll be at TriggerCon or not, but shot next year. He's gonna get an earful for sure. But I stood there and we had a conversation, and I gave him literally the patch off my badge holder because I didn't have any more. And I said, look, She's like, "Oh, I really like to have that." I'm, man, it's my last one, you know? And I'm like, okay, here's the deal. We even shook on it. I said, here's the deal. I said, I will take this off my badge holder and I will give it to you. But we have to shake hands right now and you guarantee me that your media marketing person, because they weren't there at that particular show, is going to reach out and contact me, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, we shook on it and nothing ever happened. And so I'll never forget that because it was a very specific agreement for a piece of my merch. And I'm like, dude, come on, man, come on. But you got to think that, especially when you hit these people up at these shows, just keep in mind that they're meeting with tons and tons and tons of people. So, you know, making yourself stand out and be unique so that they remember you. And sometimes that could be handing off merch. Sometimes that could be the way you're dressed. Sometimes that could be just notes and things that you make on your business card. We hadn't talked about that because we haven't really talked about working shows, but I'm sure we will as we move forward and talk about SHOT Show 24. But making little notes on your business card, and that's why having some white area, some clean area in your business cards, and carrying a Sharpie or something around can be beneficial. Is, you know, you have a conversation and then you write something as you hand off your business card to that person. You write some type of little word or note or phrase or something on that business card that relates back to the conversation that you had. And then hopefully they see that later. They whatever as they're filing that away, as they're doing something with it, and you know it sparks something in their brain like, oh yeah, I remember that person. Blah blah blah.
Let's see. So we have a couple of more starred ones here. Ozzy said the female market has exploded over the past couple of years. I'm sure there are plenty of companies willing to sponsor female training. Yes. I don't know how to make that with a big enough exclamation point, but like Columbus
Absolutely,
said,
yeah.
it's not a small market or not a small industry. It's not the biggest industry or anything, but it's not a small industry. And they definitely get big and small, and they've been big the last couple of
Well,
years. Realistically, though, they're getting smaller, and they're going to start uh, tightening belts. So the same conversations that you have, or you can't have the same conversation at a time when they're open, taking off their belts because they're busting at the seams from getting so bloated from eating so much. It's a different conversation when they're snugging up their belts because they haven't eaten in a while. And if they don't see the election year next year as what the potential, what it can do, then you might have some weird conversations with marketing people, you know, in 24 at SHOT Show this year.
yeah, and keep in mind too that it's the whole grifter bridge burning thing that we talked about earlier. It's not exclusive to men. Many women have done that too. And so just keep
There's
in
at least
mind that,
one
yeah,
chick out there that's just burning bridges constantly, and like,
oh
you know,
yeah,
she's
yeah,
hanging out with somebody who's decent, and
yeah.
it's frustrating.
Yeah, and so just keep that in mind because I know we got Brooke out there, and I think She Fires jumped in earlier, and unapologetically armed. Susan's out there, but anyway, um, yeah, just keep that in mind that you may be kind of new to this, and you may think that because that demographic is blowing up and da 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 da, like there are companies that are jaded toward people in general. It's not like a sexist thing or anything like that. Like they get screwed over by male and female both. So. Um, yeah, just keep
No,
in
it's
mind you're
more like a
dealing with that.
YouTuber thing, and then
Yeah,
Instagram will get hot, so then they get screwed over
true,
by Instagrammers, and
true.
then TikTok will be hot, so they get screwed over. You know, it's just whoever they happen to be screwed over
Yeah,
by.
this is
It's not
true.
unless,
This is
yeah.
true.
But that's not all like it is. And then I guess, just to kind of go back, you know, there's the marketing people who, depending on the size of the company, they point at one person. That's the person that does it all. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's a group of people, depending on the size of the company. It can be a department. In
Right.
any of those circumstances, people switch out or change, even if it's like the son-in-law or something. Like there's often changes there. Not always, but the rule is most of them change. Yes, period. That's the rule. Most of them change. Occasionally, you can think of exceptions to that rule, but so nothing you've got is permanent, and no company is doing the same all the time. So, you know what was booming what one point is going to be a non-conversation for 2 years, and then they've already had that conversation with you years ago. So, or they're working with you years ago. So now you can. So there's nothing that's consistent, and I don't want to say there's no rules, but there's also it's ever changing, right? So okay, it didn't work that time we worked together on Instagram or for your one project, but now you're doing this other project, or now I'm real hot on TikTok, or I'm real hot on some other platform. I've been doing this other project for a while, and now I could now that and I know what you do, and I know that what we did before didn't work, but this will work. There's you got those potentials too. So there's a lot of stuff going on. It kind of depends on the person, I suppose. So this is kind of difficult doing a general conversation to the intermediate, because typically by intermediate you've specialized or you've gone in a direction, and that's where maybe it's if you've gone live, for example, doing live shows, it's a different conversation than someone who's doing podcasts, and that's a different conversation than someone who's got a blog. But anybody who's at an advanced level, all of those types of content are monetizable. Actually, is there anything that isn't monetizable?
Well, not really, if you think about it.
No, you can
Not really.
monetize monetizing. Like,
Yep.
it's everything's monetized.
Courses, right? Courses. My $999
Oh
course.
shit! I didn't even think about. I was thinking about just monetizing, but you can
I
monetize
will
the
teach
act
you.
of monetizing or how to monetize.
Right.
Yeah,
I will
actually, if
teach you how.
anybody wants to pay for this, you can go back and pay for this if you
Yeah.
want, and then you'd be paying us for this.
Oh, all they got to do is drop a $999 super chat right now, and we'll bring them into the after chat, and we'll teach them everything they need to know about how to make money,
Literally,
and it'd be
literally
good. Yeah.
900 hours worth of everything.
Oh yeah. Pretty good, I guess.
That's good
Palate
too.
cleanser, as you would say, or way to wind down with Mike here. Is it easier to give away merch than selling it? Well, of course, it's easier to give away anything. Should you? I think is the better question, and the answer to that is everybody teach their own. I know Rob out there had a pretty good take on things, and I'll get to that here in a second. But uh, my standpoint is I give away merch occasionally. I'll do some type of little, hey, anybody want to free this or that or the other, and comment or do this, some type of engagement or a weird thing, and I'll send something out, right? But those are kind of few and far between. For the most part, yeah, you're gonna have to get on clovertech.com. You're gonna have to go to the store. You're gonna have to buy it. If one of the reasons is some of my stuff is print on demand, meaning I don't have it in hand to send it to you. So it's going to cost me to buy it to try to send it to you anyway. I've got to buy it, get it here, whatever. Um, so that doesn't work out logistically very well. But the stuff I do have here and on hand, I tend to, reserve that for people that make shows. So it's pretty much known that, hey, I'm traveling, I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm doing this, right? And so if you make that trip, if you show up, odds are I probably have a patch, I have a sticker, I have something around, and you'll be able to get that without paying for it. Why? Because you paid to go to a stinking event, so at least you got something right for that. And there's a lot of I think creators and stuff out there that they do things in a similar way as far as that. Now, as far as giveaways in general, Rob was talking about the whole idea of giving away stuff and subscribers, dropping like flies. Yeah, if you're gonna do a giveaway, just do some random stuff. Don't do like we're gonna promote this for a month and then we're gonna, do a big thing and whatever. Um, I'm not gonna say don't do that. I'm gonna say if you do it, um, don't do it with the intention of you're going to gain a bunch of subscribers. Do it as I'm doing this as a thank you for the people that are already subscribed, and then you're not going to be disappointed. You're going to have fun. You're going to give some stuff away. You're going to get some engagement with your. Yeah, you're going to get some extra people in there too, probably. But you're going to have fun with your more loyal, regular audience out there on the interwebs, right? And so that can be fine. But if you um, do some kind of thing to where I see people at 200 subscribers, they get something, whatever it might be, and then they're like, oh yeah, at 1,000 subscribers, we're gonna give this away at 1,000. Like, don't be that person. Like, put it back. Don't even say anything until you've hit the 1,000, and then do it, and you'll be a little less disappointed at the subscriber drop. So that's my tidbit. I know that was more along the lines of growing a channel in a way, but it did involve the selling element. But yeah, make the merch like you're gonna pay the money for it one way or the other. In my opinion, you're either gonna get to a show, hang out, enjoy a show, experience a show, and that show could be anything. For those out there that are regular viewers or listeners to yours. That could be NRA, that could be USCCA, that could be TriggerCon. Uh, it doesn't have to be a shot show or an industry only event. Heck, it could be GRPC. It could be Tulsa, the largest gun show in the world, coming up in November, by the way. Could be various events and things that folks just make it out, show up, you know, and hopefully they enjoy the event and everything else, and the merch they get from you is just icing on the cake, so to speak. But I've also sold merch at especially in Tulsa at the show there. I've had folks come up and insist on paying for whatever it might be. And sometimes because they insisted on paying it, I even signed it for them, which there's one cap out there in the world that has my signature on it, one at this point. Um, and it was because I'm gonna say kid, he was younger than I was, but he insisted on paying for it, insisted on paying for it, and I said, okay, well if you're gonna pay for it, we'll make it even more special because I've never signed one of my caps. So you from here, at least until I get a wild hair and do another one, maybe you've got the only one. So here it is. And so anyway, it was just doing cool things. Find cool things and cool ways to utilize your merch. Selling is certainly part of it, uh, but find it where it's more of like an engagement type thing than it is like any type of a reward system. I think is better.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're handing out free soup on the corner, how many, are you going to find more millionaires in that line or more uh, vagrants in that line? So if you're going to give a bunch of stuff away, essentially what Clover said there is you're going to get a bunch of stuff, right? A bunch of people who show up that want something for nothing. And there's enough people out there doing that as a business strategy. Do a bunch of that giveaway stuff, get a big audience. Give the thing away, then that is a strategy. But if you're attempting to make a difference, if you're attempting to create a reputation that people value so that they listen, so that they, I don't know, listen, but if they watch your stuff because they're interested in what you're talking about or whatever, then giveaway audiences are game show audiences. Game show audiences are different than the people that watch the news, and those people are different than the people who watch crime and mystery shows, right? And those people are different than the people that are watching, I don't know, a documentary, right? So whatever your subject is, then do you need people around who are watching a game show? For some people, that's going to work, and it is a sure way to get some people. So if you realize this is a mechanism and there's a platform that it's a place you can do it and you can monetize it, then maybe every day, one day of the week, you pick a day. Tuesday, you do giveaway, the giveaway Tuesday, and it's not your main focus for your whole project, but it's a way that you energize that niche, or it's a way that you create numbers, right? There's lots of strategies out there, so you can use these mechanisms for what they are. But I agree with Clover. I think the main sentiment. Oh, do you hear that? Could you hear that flying by? Um, I think the main thing is it's typically a waste of time. On the other hand, if you're giving away $10 bills, who's going to show up? Everybody's going to show up, right? Everybody in their right mind is going to show up for $10. So if you're giving away something decent, then you are going to attract a lot of people. All right. So I don't know if there's anything else. Do we have anything else starred? Oh, okay. Clover booked out of here for a bit. So we're going to take a second to mention the comment periods. This is, after all, on Gun Website's YouTube channel, and we are talking about content creators that are creating content for gun stuff. So you can only do gun stuff because we live in a country that has a constitution or whatever that prohibits the state from infringing on these rights that we have inherently. And we have that liberty requires eternal vigilance concept. So we enjoy a lot of the fun stuff. We are able to defend ourselves, and we're able to learn how to do that effectively because of the environment. Let's not take that for granted. That doesn't happen. It's not somebody else's job or obligation for that. So with that being said, I believe we're seeing a lot of distraction from the comment periods. There's 7,000 comments on the definition of who's a seller. They're trying to redefine what is a seller of firearms. They're also trying to do a comment period on explosives and put one comment period out there that nobody could give a shit about, the explosives one, that people are going to ignore due to their, just interest in not giving a shit about stuff. And then put another comment period out there while you distract with about a half a dozen things that are easy to distract with. We're either going to get past the barking dogs or we're going to be distracted by them. So let's just remember that there's a comment period out there. We have voices in our comments and in our choice of content, and I encourage people to participate in the areas that we have in our system to participate in. People that do nothing and then complain that nothing happens are frustrating. We seen comment periods be very effective in the past, so I'm going to champion those. The state level organizations and national level organizations have their hands full with certain things, but we're by no means limited to their abilities. All right, with that being said, I appreciate everybody who joins us to learn more about content creation. Clover and I are both available for independent consulting if you'd like. Essentially, you can pay us or you can ask for it for free. We'll help you out either way. After the show like this, we leave the room open for an off-air conversation. We've actually got people in the back right now waiting to have a conversation. We usually chat for an hour or so, maybe sometimes longer, depending on the day. So if you'd like to be part of that, let us know. Contact us on the Instagrams or someplace. But otherwise, thanks everybody for joining us. I'll put a commercial up here for our store, which is one of the ways that I monetize. Feel free to grab stuff from there. It helps out our projects. We do have a Patreon, so people that subscribe to our projects make it possible for us to spend time on our projects like this and keep our websites and our servers going. Clover has a Patreon as well, and we both have YouTube channel members, so we do appreciate people that participate in keeping us online.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.
Oh, Clover has a thing right at the top of the hour all the time. And or maybe it was at the half an hour mark. He has a phone call, so he always ditches out to do that phone call if we overlap it or whatever. But it's we just jam this in without realizing about that other obligation he has every week. So anyway, thanks again for everybody for joining us. We do appreciate the live conversation as well. We'll be back next week with the next in this series. I don't have the comments up or the thing up to tell me what the next week is, but it'll be riveting. And Clover and I will be back on Saturday with Ask Gun Questions along with Tony. And then check out Gear Report on Thursday if you can take it, if you accept the challenge.